Good afternoon, everyone. As we continue our science seminar series, I'd like to announce that next week on September 26th, our guest speaker will be Dr. Hamid Mumin from Brandon University, presenting impact of evolutionary earth changes on global temperature and CO2. I would also like to add that next week's talk, instead of the usual 2:30 start time, will actually start at 3 p.m. and end at 4 p.m. So next week's talk will be at 3 and end at 4 instead of the usual 2:30. I will remind everyone at the end. But for today, I'm really excited to welcome Devon Baete, Field Operations Manager for Squeal on Pigs Manitoba. Devon has a background in natural resources management and over 15 years of experience working directly with landowners here in Manitoba as a Watershed Project Coordinator. He's been involved in wildlife monitoring for about 20 years, everything from helping set up artificial burrowing owl dens to tracking northern prairie skinks. In 2017, wild pig populations had expanded, and Spruce Woods Park had approached the Cypress River Wildlife Association to help install traps to remove wild pigs and with support from the Manitoba Pork Council. Devon took the lead on testing and adapting wild pig trapping methods for a cold climate here in Manitoba. His work has been crucial in developing practical, landowner-friendly tools, and thanks to these efforts, nearly 500 wild pigs have been removed across the province. Today, he'll be talking about surveillance methods for wild pigs in a cold climate, sharing some of the challenges and new techniques his team is using to track and manage these animals here in Manitoba. Please join me in giving Devon a warm welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I got started into wild pigs kind of a weird way. I started volunteering with wildlife projects, and then they needed help doing work with wild pigs, and I was just the guy that stepped up and got involved, and then transitioned from a volunteer work, I guess, on the side to full-time employment that I do now for Manitoba, running the field operations side of Squeal on Pigs Manitoba. So it is a shared program. It's not governmental. It's some industry with Manitoba Pork, some government, some federal grants and stuff like that. So it's a pretty unique thing we got going on in Manitoba. And with that, I'll just give some background on wild pigs and what we do to try to find them. So it's nice having you guys here. I do quite a bit of presentations to say more government related individuals and stuff, and it's more just saying things. Whereas you guys, I'm kind of looking for feedback. Actually, there's just different ways that you guys can think actually of surveilling wild pigs and stuff. So learn a little bit about what wild pigs are and then what we do, and maybe you guys have some ideas too. So to start off, so in Manitoba, we actually consider any wild pig that's outside of somebody's property, not contained, to be a wild pig. So people just can think we always just deal with big scary solar wild boar, but we actually do deal with like pet populated pigs that actually have turned feral. We deal a lot of that more in the southeast Manitoba, little hobby farms. They get cute little populated pigs, and then they get too big, and then they let them roam around, and eventually they survive through the winters and create little populations. So the same thing with domestic pigs. They escape from fences, they go into other people's property, and we go there. So that's a whole other side of things that we deal with. They're much easier to find. It's easy to surveil them and locate domestic or populated pigs because they're quite tame usually. But it's really the Eurasian wild boar that we're concerned with. So why do we have them here? Well, they were brought here between the 1980s and 1990s. Basically, they were brought over to diversify Canada's farms, and at the same time, try to build up a population so that there was interest in an export market. So at one time, there's estimated that over 30,000 wild boar were being raised across the Canadian prairies. So we have had a lot of wild boar on the Canadian prairies, and unfortunately, there never was a market. So once that population got to that point, people are like, well, what do we do with these pigs? They're very expensive to raise. They're very hard on fencing as it is. and a lot of people just let them go. And even during that period before, like males in particular, because they're very difficult to castrate pigs in order to sell them. That wasn't happening, a lot of them were escaping, and populations were building even during that time, so even though it's kind of new. For us, if you're like on the media side of things, they've been around actually for decades, so. And we know that now just from door-to-door work and other work that's been done in Canada, that there actually was pretty large populations in certain areas, even in Manitoba, that we don't actually see now. There's just kind of some key areas where we know we have wild boar now breeding, and surviving through our winters. So we'll talk a little bit about movement. So our pigs are really different from other areas. So most of the information that we know about wild pigs in general comes from the States. They have millions of them down there. But unfortunately, the data that we get from down there is completely different from our pigs. Those are different species in reality. They were brought over a lot, 100 years ago. They come from Papua New Guinea basically, and were brought over and were built up from that herd. Whereas our pigs are basically Russian wild boar. So our pigs in general, they like to be nocturnal. Very few are ever seen during the daylight. They like to stay under cover. They have much larger ranges. That's the big thing, is they like to just roam around a lot. They move seasonally, so even in forested areas where there's food and stuff, during the spring, they might go to like grassy areas and forage on grasses and forbs and root up for grubs and stuff. But then come summertime, it's dry. They might move more to like river systems or on crop fields. And then come fall, they'll go towards like forest oaks and acorns, and then winter, kind of move around again and maybe look for just like man-made like crops and stuff like that as food sources. And they'll move around a lot, like as big groups and stuff. So that makes it difficult to locate. The younger males move around a lot. They kind of get pushed off the groups once they reach sexual maturity, and then they kind of start their own little groups and stuff. And those are typically the ones people report they see. Yeah, our pigs mainly forage on natural food, so that makes it more difficult to locate them too. In the States, it's popular to like put out a bait site and stuff like that, or corn feeding. Deer feeders are really typical in the United States, especially in Texas. Like every landowner probably has multiple deer feeders, and those pigs are used to coming there from when they're born to those deer feeders every day to feed, and that's where they have a huge population. In Manitoba, it's illegal to place bait, so we don't have to deal with that as much. And our pigs just don't really know what that is for the most part, so they much prefer just grazing, kind of similar to like a deer would, going through the forest and stuff, eating acorns. Yeah, they travel a lot between where they sleep at night and where they go for food, and even water. It seems like it's less important. Not saying they don't need water, especially when it's hot during the summer, but they can travel long distances compared to in the US where they maybe stay within like a 100-acre zone. Our pigs can travel like 10 kilometers from a river system way out to a crop field at night. So yeah, having something tucked in within your habitat is less important for wild pigs. And they have individual behavior. So what one pig does doesn't mean the next pig is going to do the exact same thing. Whether it's movement, where it eats, yeah, they're all pretty unique in that sense too. And then again, we know that now a natural sense tends to push them away from areas. They're pretty smart about that. And not saying they won't come back there, but they'll come back way late at night. So that's where hunting and stuff doesn't really work well. I'm not saying the odd person hasn't shot a pig, but placing baits is not effective in a way to like surveillance them and look for them, except for at night. So what's the issue? The damage. So this is just a typical spot we find either on private land or in Spruce Woods Park areas. So they root up the land. They're looking for grubs mainly. It's actually amazing how many of these big juicy grubs we have buried underneath the sod, and that's what they're after for the most part. You go with the shovel and move it around. There's lots there actually, so that's what they're after for the most part. And then just the roots and grazing on the grass and stuff like that too. So the problem is when they expose it and they leave it open like this, you get a lot of invasive species. That come in, so like leafy spurge and stuff, spruce woods that can get established, so. And then on haylands, that's really the worst, either our native pasture lands or the haylands, because you have these giant chunks of sod flipped over. And then you have haying equipment having to go through those lands, and then if they can't go through there, they really have to either rip up the whole land and start over again, which is, reestablishing a whole native ecosystem of haylands there, so it's expensive and it's damaging for equipment, so. And water quality, so pigs, they do go down to the waters and they like to roll around, cover themselves in mud, and they, mix up the water, it's a turbid, it's not good for fish habitat. Just the water quality in general, so that's definitely an issue as well. And then just all of the wildlife then, so, they eat anything, they choose what they wanna eat, but they can pretty much eat anything, so whether it's meats or plants or grains. So they're competing directly with other wildlife, especially deer, that's definitely a main competitor. And then they're just rooting up and destroying grasslands and meadows and habitat that are important for certain species that maybe don't move around as much. They'll feed on eggs of ground nested birds such as turkeys. And they will take down, like they find like a fawn that is somewhere, they will take that down and eat it, no problem, so. And then in small animals, whether it's rabbits or other things, if they can capture it, so. We've seen them, they chase away deer and things from food sources, whether it's. Like an alfalfa field or cornfield, they'll chase them out of those fields and push deer away from that area. And then in the winter time, when food sources kind of get scarce for them, they'll actually go and they'll root up underneath spruce trees and stuff and try to find squirrel catches where they hide a bunch of acorns or pine needles or spruce needles and stuff like that. So that has an impact then in all of their great predator species, owls, fishers, hawks, cats, a lot of things like that living there. And then competition with black bears, so they're very similar to black bears in that, they're trying to eat a whole bunch through the summer. And then black bears, then they need to put on a bunch of weight and hibernate through the winter. And there's definitely a lot more bear issues we're seeing, I think, around Spruce Woods Park in particular, because there's more competition and they're getting pushed around a lot. They don't know what these things are, I think, too, a lot of it. And that pushes them out, causes more human conflict on residential or agriculture areas, so. So what's the big push to remove them now? So they've been around for decades, I say, but it's really because of disease. That's the main reason why there's a huge push in the last few years to try to get down that population. So they carry a lot of different diseases, unfortunately. Just pigs in general can carry diseases, whether it's for other wildlife or humans even. And African swine fever is pretty fatal, pretty bad on what's going on in the country or world for the last 5 years or so. It's basically wiped out pork production in other countries. We don't have it here anywhere in North America. But if it ever would come to be found in North America, it would be pretty devastating to definitely all the pork production for sure within Manitoba. It's a huge industry. It's really important for Manitoba in general. I mean, Brandon in general, even what Maple Leaf and economics behind that. So it's a big industry that's pretty worried, I guess about this African swine fever. So we work pretty closely with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. We collect tissues on all our pigs, and we are part of the Can Spot program where we submit those tissues to get tested for African swine fever to make sure we don't have that in the wild pigs. And then that gets reported to our export markets and make sure that we have clean health for all of our pigs here. But the main thing is that before this disease even gets to Canada, North America, if we can prevent the spread of that disease by reducing down our populations of wild pigs, that's the best method for sure to prevent that disease and from spreading. So that's why there's a lot of work done right now to try to wipe out these populations before they come here and they spread around. So again, we have a really unique approach. So other provinces kind of run their wild pig programs mainly right through government. Saskatchewan runs through their crop insurance program. Ontario's government, Alberta's government, BC's government. We're more industry, so we're kind of a collaboration, both with Manitoba Pork, and then also wildlife, agriculture and parks departments through the province as well. And then we're funded through the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership Grant, which is a provincial federal grant. And we share practices between other provinces, like our own governments and stuff, and we're talking like daily between the wildlife departments here, parks, national parks. Yeah, there's lots of collaboration. It's not just like a little group here, looking out for pig. It's a big organization here in Rebel. So, and we work with a lot of landowners, like hundreds of landowners. We have cameras, we talk to them. And we work with First Nations and Métis communities as well. And then we're partnered with Invasives Canada. They used to be called Invasive Species Canada, so that's a kind of an outreach and education program in Canada. So we give them information that they can share. And then ourselves, we do a lot of outreach, such as try to educate the public on what these wild pigs are, how to report them. So part of public outreach, we do several events. I host something in Spruce Woods Park every year. We go to the Hotspot Trail. People come there, explain about wild pigs, what they look like, what their signs look like, and then how to report them. We have a display set up now in partnership with National Parks in the Spruce Woods Park Museum. So they got a little piggy there, some information about the wild boar of Manitoba. We go to a lot of fairs, so Pride Fair here, egg booths across Manitoba, just educating people about wild pigs, and then even like just husbandry and stuff. So there's some little pigs and events there, and about proper fencing and stuff for domestic pigs as well. So this is mainly what we teach about. It's the different signs of wild pigs. So like I say, these pigs are mainly nocturnal. It's very hard to then see them and observe them to then send a report. It's mainly about signs that they've left there. So scats, one way, it's not a very good way because it varies a lot by seasons, what they're eating, because they're omnivores, they're eating a lot of different things. But typically it kind of looks more like a horse scat than you think of anything else, I guess. So I think it's kind of bunched up that way. Tracks are a good way. Wild pig have rounded toes for the most part, and they have dew claws at the back that are spaced out further than, let's say, a deer or an elk. As long as you don't have like a deer and elk that's running weird or something and it pushes them out. So sometimes you can have deer, elk being identified as wild pigs too. Wallows are pretty good, so that's where they're going and rolling and getting covered in mud. Elk also do that though, so that's something that we need to be aware of. And there's elk in the population there. It could be from them as well. But rooting overall is a really good way of identifying as wild pigs. So, like you said, wherever they're going and feeding, they're usually rooting at some time. So they're digging in to flipping the sod. Black bears are pretty good at doing this as well. But they usually grab the sod and they pull it, and they're looking for roots and they kind of pick through it. So it's broken up a little bit more. But I've come across huge areas that have been rooted up by black bears, especially on like Spruce Woods Park or recreational trails that we thought were wild pigs, and we put cameras there and literally see bears going like this and ripping it all up. So that's not to say if you see rooting like that, don't report it, because we can go out there and identify it. So, but we use a few different ways here to identify if it is a wild pig. And this is our way of people to report them. So this is our citizen science kind of method way of people to report them. It's worked very well. So people can either phone in their sighting or go on our website, and then there's a form they can fill out. It's just the location, what you saw, time of day, that kind of thing, and then it's reported to us. We go out there and we confirm the presence. So this is our most updated map. This is up to June, just showing where we have wild pig sightings within Manitoba. This is going back a year. We like to try to stay current. So the red dot there is Spruce Woods Park, Brandon. Just southeast of here is kind of where the population begins. For the most part, those are for the mainly younger males that are traveling in through that area, it seems like. But there are some there, but there's dots across Manitoba. A lot of them are from old farms, farm pigs that are just still have remaining populations that we're targeting. But they're there. There's still some spread out across Manitoba. So let's talk about locating wild pigs. So during the daytime, they're pretty difficult to see. They like to stay under cover. They're almost like they're kind of like vampire. Like they don't like to be in the light at all. It seems like they like to be bedded underneath thick spruce or cover. Makes it very difficult to see them. So especially during the summer, they stay in tall vegetation. So they might go onto cattails or in cornfields. In the winter, they pretty much go up on higher areas and they bed underneath spruce trees. So again, from above, you would be able to see them. And they're kind of hidden. It's dark underneath there. They're very hard to see. But at night, everything changes. So once there's cover and darkness, especially after like midnight, they go anywhere. They can be way out in the open, on a highway. That's when most of our sightings come, is people driving down highways and they're just like, hey, I think I saw a pig cross the highway. You know, it'll be 10, 15 kilometers from any bedding area that they should be at. So they're moving around a lot during at night. And yeah, often pretty far away from where we're during the daytime. So something that's always under cover during the day, what's the best way to then to see these pigs? So thermal cameras is kind of the new technique and the new way we found in Canada, I guess, to locate pigs. Compared to the States where it's warmer all the time, in Canada when it's cold, especially even at night here, there's quite a temperature difference and you can locate those pigs pretty easily. Even a day like today, it's overcast, it's cooler. It's great conditions to actually locate wild pigs using a thermal camera. So here's some photos just side by side. This is in like November a few years ago, looking straight overhead into a cornfield. And I mean, you can make out there's some black dots in the snow on the left there, but with the thermal camera, they just glow. You can easily see that there's pigs there. So here too, this is during a summer in a cornfield again. The ones that are out in the open and the bare, they're easy to see. But you know, all of these pigs down in the corn here, these spots, they're kind of hard to see because you're just looking at still image when you're actually viewing them and they're moving around. Very easy to see and count the number of pigs. So this week especially, it's been overcast and poor weather, but it's been great conditions. So I've been flying over cornfields and we've been able to locate pigs. As farmers have actually been chopping silage in those fields and stuff, locating these pigs, reporting it to those farmers, and they've been able to remove those pigs because eventually they keep going around in a circle and those pigs can't go anywhere. When they run out, they're able to remove them. So very effective way to even just let landowners know where these pigs are that they would never know they're out there. So here again, this is a side by side. So this is a mature female laying there with her piglets actually suckling from her, and you would never see that with just an optical camera. So the thermal camera it's amazing really how well they work. So why are we using the thermal drones? So because you can use thermal cameras, like there's cameras you can get walk around with from the side and stuff too. But obviously thermal drones are great. Coverage. So we can fly over huge areas, like thousands and thousands of acres in minutes, literally. Like I can stop them. You know, our flight time's like 45 minutes per battery, and you can cover sections upon sections of land with a thermal drone that you would never cover in weeks walking around. So coverage is the main thing. Comfort, I'll say. A lot of times the best time to fly the drones is like -30 when it's really cold. You can put that drone up and you can see a pig like a mile away because it's just such a temperature difference then. And I literally just sit in the truck, you know, it's the heater on and, you know, and yeah, and it works great. You can fly huge areas and travel a mile down the road as long as too much snow. Yeah, comfort's a mean, you know, walk around that -30 or snow. Portable. So we have snowmobiles, so you can throw the little backpacks or on sleds. drive a few miles into the park or in areas, fly it up, and then go a little bit further. But one of the limitations of drones, like wind is a limitation, you can't fly, it's too windy. But coverage or distance, they're rated, like we have a drone that I have, it's rated for 15 miles, but you get over like a mile and a half and the sensors and everything start saying, hey, where are you going with this thing? So you can't go too far with them. And that's definitely a limit of them. So because they're small and portable, at least you can travel further ahead, especially if you have a snowmobile. So that is the nice thing about them. Low disturbance. So pigs are pretty smart. For the most part, if you tried to walk in areas, they'd be gone before you got there. So you can fly over areas without them knowing they're there. And also you can see what they're doing. So here again, it's up on a high ridge. This was a winter, didn't have much snow, but they were still way up high on these ridge lines underneath spruce trees, and these is two sows with their two younger piglets that they had bedded there. So they didn't know we were there. We left them, we could go in with cameras and then try to remove them and stuff. So yeah, it's low disturbance is really key. And obviously because they're cameras, they're taking all the information we need, whether it's the time of day and the dates, but also the GPS coordinates, which is extremely useful then for collecting information and using it to share with other users. So whether it's the videos or all their still photos, there's a lot of information collected there. And night use. So because pigs move around mostly at night, they're looking for food and stuff like that. They're not bedded under trees for the most part as much. They're a lot easier to see from the sky then. So because with thermal drones and we all have our licenses, so we can fly during nights and actually see them quite easily. It's colder as well too. So we're not relying on just optical cameras and stuff to locate these pigs. We can find them. So an interesting point about this photo is this is a big male. And it's got these kind of hard to see, but it's got these bars down its back. And that's thicker kind of grizzle lines that it has over the top of its back and over its shoulders. So there's more hair there. So it's insulated better. So they show up darker compared to the sides where it's giving off more heat. Even the ears, inside the ears, this one is Joel Gray, but they're giving off more heat there and stuff. So it's pretty detailed what the thermal cameras can do. And the overhead photos. So you can see what that pig's doing and see it clearly to identify maybe even some coloring on it to actually identify that pig. And even if it's a male or female, stuff like that. So you're getting really good overhead photos or videos of those pigs. And you can do good population counts compared to just like a still trail cam or something and then going by, you might have a group broken up in different groups and stuff. We're here. You could with taking a video, especially, you can go back and you can count those pigs moving around very easily, know how many mature pigs, juveniles, piglets there are. So very useful for population counts. And just other signs. So we're not necessarily looking for wild pigs when we're flying our thermal drones, we're just looking for more areas where they can be. And this is like a bedding spot underneath the spruce tree. So there's a good chance there could be pigs bedded up further underneath those trees that you can't see. But because they're there, they're giving out heat, or they were there and it's still warm, it shows up bright, so you can mark those positions down to then go in after. So really useful for sign. That even their trails where they're walking, you can identify them pretty good compared to deer, elk, or other species. Takes a little bit to get used to, but it is different from other species we have, so you can tell where they're traveling and then mark those trails. And then again, just like rooting, like even in the summer where there's bare soil opened up, it's going to be hotter, it's going to show up. And then even just other wildlife present. So we have quite a few elk within the Spruce Woods region. So just knowing that there's like an elk population right there to be aware of when we take our trapping and what types of traps we want to use in that area. So we're not affecting these other populations of wildlife. And because we own them, so we own 6 or 7 thermal drones now through all of our field staff. We can go out day after day, week after week to certain locations And actually track movements of those pigs. We can plot it. And then find out where these pigs are moving and then kind of go down. Typically, we don't do any work within Spruce Woods Park. We've never trapped there, up until recently now. So we were targeting pigs on private lands, but with the thermal drones, we could actually locate their moving patterns, set up traps on private lands, and then remove those pigs there. So they were very important, especially for last year and the year before, locating these networks where these trail pigs are moving. So we found out, you know, what do they like? I guess it's a big thing. So that's where like the ridge lines come in, oaks, stuff like that, that we didn't really think about the pigs using those areas before. A lot of the information that's known about wild pigs, you know, like cattails or wet areas or thick willows in winter, and our pigs don't. We find them in pretty much open spruce, oak, highlands more than down in the low areas. So, yeah, that's been pretty key knowing that. And just some behaviors. So it's a big male, just walking up to a tree and rubbing its face on it, walking up to another tree and a trail and marking its face. So you're just picking up different behaviors. So he's obviously either marking those trees or picking up scent from sows or other males that have marked those trees as well. So you wouldn't get that with, you know, a trail camera placed somewhere. You're getting really good information of what these pigs are actually doing. And then you're doing a lot of pre-scouting for trapping. So we use few different trap techniques. This is a net trap we've been using, and just locating spots where we can actually get in there and place these traps without them really knowing about it. So example, we found some pigs actually down along the river valley. Would never have walked in there. No one would have ever seen those pigs otherwise. We're able to get in there, place a trap. We did put a camera, but we never thought there was self-service or coverage for it to work, but it did. We were thinking, oh, we'll put a camera, we have a thermal drone, we can fly over it every morning and see if something is captured. And literally within a few days, I think, of actually finding the site, putting up the trap, they were captured and we removed that whole group of so a dozen or something. So huge impact for that area that we were able to remove this group because they would have never been seen. I'm sure most of these are actually females, and just that alone, like removing one female is huge, but if you can remove like 8 or so from that area that are going to reproduce in the springtime again, that could turn to 50 plus pigs very quickly. So just that one capture there was huge. So as far as flying the drones, most flights for wildlife, like the flying overhead, kind of looking down and stuff, because our pigs are hidden more, we always like to fly looking at an angle ahead to try to see them underneath cover and spruce trees and stuff like that. So that's kind of the best way I found. All of our fields have a little bit different way of how they fly their drones. Some of them do it like grids back and forth and stuff still. I'm more just fly it out like half a mile and, you know, circle around, look what's there, and then go ahead again and circle around. And if it's really cold out, they're going to show up. So yeah, that's kind of the best way we found. So because there is, you know, other ways of using thermal drones, like there's planes that do thermal scouting. They mainly record, you know, like videos just going ahead like this and then going back and that too. So yeah, we found this the best way, or I found it the best way. Some other methods we use for surveillance besides the thermal drones is cell cameras. So we have a network of 100 cell cameras across the province right now, plus just some trail cameras. These are a really good tool. Because our pigs are pretty smart, you don't want to just be checking trail cameras every week or so or what's there. Any human scent that you leave there is not good. So with cell cameras, we can place it there, not disturb the area, not disturb the pigs, and then monitor what they're doing. And then we also mainly do this on private lands. All of our landowners are connected to their own trap sites or camera sites, and they're involved. So we have really good relationships with all of our landowners because they're involved. Other provinces, they kind of go in there as their own team. The landowners don't seem as much involved, and it's not really good. Like I'm a hunter, like, you know, grew up on farm and stuff like that. For somebody government especially come in and just say, hey, we're targeting these pigs, and I think a great approach. Whereas we're really pushing that, we're giving tools to the landowners so they're involved, and it's been great. So like, yeah, hundreds of landowners we work with all the time. This is mainly what we see, like lone pigs, middle of the night, moving through. We do have some groups of pigs, but for the most part, it's lone pigs that we have because they aren't. It's the best way to say it. They don't like each other for a lot of times, like especially the males. So, they're not as social as definitely in the States where you see these hundreds of pigs and stuff like that. Like we don't see those groups like that. They'll split off into little groups, and even if we see like a dozen pigs, they don't feed together. They like to make their own little groups and stay a little bit apart. So you mainly get single pigs on cameras and at night. So again, we use those cameras then, knowing there's pigs there, to set up traps and remove these pigs. So this one was a few weeks ago actually. We saw with some juveniles at this location along the field and set up our corral trap there. So this is one of our metal corral traps to remove those pigs. So we have a lot of data because we have all these cell cameras, all these drone flights and stuff like that. So it's a little bit overwhelming really, but every month I go through, save every photo we have of pigs at every camera site, so 100 cameras. And that data again gets uploaded into our database. And every camera has its own Excel sheet basically of everything that's been there, when, if we can identify if it's a female or male. Yeah, quite a bit of data there. We don't do a lot with it, but it's there. And we have done some data analysis. We share it with the other product. I think it's the University of Calgary actually that's looking at our data right now, more on sounder dynamics between other provinces. So knowing like how many females there are, juveniles and stuff. So it's interesting to know that for reproduction reasons. Yeah, what we're seeing there. On our side of things, when we do remove those pigs, we're taking quite a bit of measurements. So take length measurements, heart girths, yeah, so and the accurate weights, and then we're also taking the skulls and trying to age these pigs using their tooth eruptions is a pretty good way. And then we can compare that with our weights, our measurements, and then if there were sows that were piglets that were feeling pregnant, how far along they were, we can kind of figure out some reproduction data on these pigs, which is really important. We're finding out pretty interesting things about our pigs that make them pretty unique. So it does seem like they take a lot longer to grow than in other areas. And that's mainly because they'll grow from, let's say, the spring up to a certain size in the fall, and the winters are very hard on them. Last winter, as soon as you get like February, deep snow cover, especially the small pigs, they use a lot of energy just moving around through deep snow. And very few of those survive our winters. People think like our pigs are flourishing or expanding, but they're surviving. The ones that are surviving are the mature females and that then are again reproducing. So yeah, we're finding quite a bit of information about our pigs just by collecting more information about our pigs. So we are doing a little bit of field research. So this is a surveillance method we're working with the Cinnabon College on. So they're trying to figure out the best methods to identify wild pig presence in water through eDNA. So trying different filters, different graph sample methods. And unfortunately, there's a lot of variables because compared to the States, again, with cold conditions, colder water in the spring, some streams are more turbid than others. It makes it very difficult. So, but the thing is, we are locating and it is working. We have areas where we're putting out cameras on streams, seeing there's pigs crossing, taking samples, and we are getting positives on those water samples. So we have that side, I think, figured out really well. And there's a hope. My hope is that we can use it in areas where there's less public, especially just east of here. So north of between Mi'kmaq, actually down to #1 highway, there's a huge area of community pastures. Very few people live out there, but there's lots of freshwater springs that are coming off of all those highlands of oak forest, and very possible there's pigs there, but we don't get reports in that area because there's not very many people out there. So if we can go to the streams downstream, collect water samples and then say, hey, there is wild pigs here, then we can go in there and spend more time with the thermal drones and other cameras and stuff and try to locate them and then remove them. So and then we can expand that basically across Canada is the hope. So that we can be basically going out there, taking water samples and be like, okay, no pigs here now, but go again and there's pigs here after, or there's areas where there is pigs. So it's going to be very useful once we get this figured out. We've done a few little mini studies, I guess, just seeing what pigs like. In the States, they use a lot of strawberry jello. It works good here actually too. I don't know. Not sure exactly why, but it works great. But what other attractants are there for pigs? We put out a bunch of natural, some pheromones, and just some man-made products, and just to see what would work really well. And unfortunately, we didn't find anything that worked really good in the winter time, because once it's cold, since don't seem to travel as well compared to when it's really hot out. Especially like raw things don't work as well. So but we're gonna be continuing that and seeing what we can use to attract pigs locations, because it's useful for tracking. So range is a big thing that we don't know about. So I talked about some of our pigs possibly traveling large distances, but we don't really have a good idea on what's an actual range of wild pigs, and it's going to vary between the mature males, the females, the juveniles, and the bachelor groups especially. The bachelors move around more than anything, but the sows, maybe they do just stick in a few mile area. So the main thing is that when we do have, let's say, a disease outbreak or something, then we know, like, okay, we got to set a buffer zone of 10 kilometers around this point to do a bunch of surveillance and stuff. And then work a little bit further out compared to just saying, okay, like it's 100 kilometers wide, look for this pig. Well, that's a lot of resources to cover that area. So we are looking at possibly doing some coloring and seeing how far different types of pigs move. So and that's it. So yeah, we have a partnership here with Sustainable Canadian Agriculture. Yeah, it's great. So if you guys have any questions at all? Sure.
Thank you, Devon. Do we have any questions for him?
Yeah, Carter.
So in terms of like the EDA, do you think it would be useful to do a bias study using the scat potentially to inform models where they could be where they could travel to?
Yeah, that's actually something they're looking at this winter, is using their scat, because unfortunately, like it's not really easy to identify that, for one thing. So yeah, we're actually looking at more for the public, that if somebody's like, hey, I got this, found this thing here, is this pigs, like we can try to identify. It's very difficult to, but then we can collect that sample and do any DNA testing on it would make sense, right? Especially if we're talking like, I don't know, from here, like I don't know this area, but let's say Rocky Mountain or North area, so we can collect that sample and then send it in. So, and then the hard part about scat is they don't find a lot of it, I guess. This is one thing though. Like pigs in general are pretty clean animals. They wouldn't think they are, but they are pretty clean animals. But we don't come across that very often. So
Okay, so
yeah.
do you think it would also inform your range, I guess, if you could use that scat and determine what's in it, I guess, so say acorns, you think you could make a model that would project where they're going to travel then, in terms of figuring out that range that obviously is more difficult to figure out where, like, maybe you find a map of where, I don't know what they lines and shit,
Right.
but figure out where the acorns are, and then potentially use that to inform the range.
Yeah, I'm thinking actually even if they were able to break down the DNA right down to the specific pig, then if you have scat here and scat there, they match up, then you can figure out a range actually pretty good with scat. So that's a good one. But yeah, I don't know like what we are testing, because they're just trying to break it down. Whether it's a deer or anything. As far as our testing for the eDNA, we actually don't even break it down to pig species, because we're not, it's a pig there, it's a pig there kind of thing, but it's something that we're definitely need to look at, so. Yeah,
I was just wondering, because we're saying that they kind of have that individualistic behavior, they don't really herd. How do you use the drones to track their movement? If you're like, would you have to identify certain markings on them? Because you wouldn't really know if it's like the same thing or not.
yeah,
Does that make sense? Or would you just have to keep the drone on it for like hours and hours? And
well, for us, I'd say that even though the pigs, let's say, they can still, are in groups, standard groups for the most part. But they're using the same habitat or trail systems, or, so we're not even
Oh.
interested if it's like, this pig today is going here and following that exact pig. It's more like, okay, we see a pig here, and then in a week or two, we got other pigs over here. It may be the same pig in that group or something. And then over, a week over here, they could be here, or they could be way up here. And then all of a sudden you're finding like, oh, they're using this travel corridor or something during this time of year. And then using that information with the thermal drones then to target those pigs. And that's a hard, because they do move around a lot, they're very seasonal, especially this time of year. This time of year, as crops come off, farmers are like, oh, we reported rooting here. I mean, it could have been from months ago, and those pigs could be, they're usually long gone. By the time something's reported, it's probably common with other wildlife species too, but they're usually pretty far away, and we're always trying to get ahead of them. And the more information that we know that we're collecting from the thermal drones, really, of where they're moving from now and through the winter, we actually, like, we're moving cameras to locations where we're not seeing pigs right now, but we know once the ground freezes and they can't root for food anymore, and they start getting hungry, they're gonna be moving in certain locations, and they're gonna start popping up there, and that's when we really try to target them on traps and stuff too. So it's not really a specific pig. And that is something with pigs in the United States, is because they're kind of a mixed domestic heritage, different pigs. A lot of them have like spots on them or stripes or weird things, and when we talk to those people, they're like, like, how do you know you've removed this exact pig? And we're like, we don't, like, we're removing pigs, but we don't know we've removed this exact pig always. Whereas they're like, oh, like, if we see this pig on this farm, we're not gonna stop until we find that pig in our trap and stuff like that. So that is a difficult thing with our pigs, because they're just that brown face.
Yeah.
They have some color, we have some little bit of changes in them, because even when those pigs were brought over, most of those were sows. They were mixed with like domestic boars over here. It makes sense to bring a lot of boars, right? So they brought me females, and then some of them are like crossed with Yorkshire, which are like a pink pig. And so we do see some colors a little bit in different areas, but overall, yeah, they all look the same. It's hard to individually track each pig. So
Can I just quickly
Yeah.
follow up?
yeah, sure.
So then how do you estimate population?
Yeah,
Like
It's
it's
hard.
kind of impossible.
it's almost impossible. It is, I mean, it's so hard. The main thing though, because we can cover huge areas with the thermal drones, especially after we do like a huge amount of traffic. So last year, we removed like 100+ pigs within Spruce Woods Park through the winter, and then just constantly flying drones around for weeks at kind of that end of the winter period. Very difficult to find any pigs. Like, not saying there wasn't pigs there, but it was extremely difficult to find pigs. So you kind of go in and feel like, well, I'm not saying they're all gone, but very few pigs remaining in those areas. Unfortunately, pigs reproduce constantly. They don't have like periods where they're, having young ones. Like middle winter, January, we'll find sows with piglets. So they're constantly reproducing. And then once spring comes and they have optimum conditions, it's warmer, they can survive, that population goes way back up again. And then you're kind of fighting again next year. So when we're targeting the mature females, then, over time, we definitely are having a harder time finding wild pigs year after year after year. And we have more staff, more cameras, more drones, more effort. And we're not seeing this at all. We're seeing like this, if anything, we're seeing kind of this. So we know the population, it's not expanding.
Yeah.
For all of the efforts that we're doing, it's that we haven't seen it doing that. It's staying stable or declining, if anything, I think. So it's so hard. It's not like you can just go and fly over an area, count the number of deer and then go back next year, and it goes around so much, it's very difficult to do a population, so.
Yeah.
First,
When you guys do find pigs, whose responsibility is it? Your guys or the landowner to eliminate them? And how do you do that?
yeah, so there's a few different ways, like we mainly work with the landowners and we have permits to place our traps and use traps or with Pigs Manitoba. That are operated by either ourselves or the pigs and they're shot, like that's the way to, like we don't load them on trailers or pet them or anything, they're wild. They're not friendly, I'll just say that, so, and then they're eliminated, so. But a lot of them, yeah, if farmers see them in the field, like they do stay out of their shot as well, but that's basically what's done, so. Yeah, as humanely as we try to be, so.
Yeah, it sounds like you're recording a lot of information and storing a lot of data in your database. Is there anything else that you can get from that besides just wild pigs? Are you interested in any other animals or types of plants? or-
Yeah, I don't know if you saw like, I'll just say there's a lot of interesting stuff that we come across with the 100 trail cameras out there each day, like, you know, like cougars population, like we have cougars on our cameras. Black bear populations is unreal, like I grew up not far away from Spruce Woods Park. And you think like, oh, you know, you hear like a black bear on somebody's land, it was like, oh my god, and now you have these trail cameras and you're seeing like dozens of bears on a single camera at some locations, you're like, oh, like there's a lot out there actually, so. Yeah, even bobcats, stuff like that, like really interesting stuff, so I try to save all those photos, because I feel like somebody's gonna be interested in them. As far as like cougars and bobcat groups, like that gets sent to the wildlife department, so they can do development basically, so. Yeah, but if there's anything else that anyone was ever interested in, like we do have quite a bit of information there, so, like, yeah, you guys, like there's information there, so, yeah.
Yeah, so to that point, it was in the COVID years, but Ryan Brooks, he reached out to me, there were some things in Saskatchewan, I was on lizards, skinks. And so there's a paper, there's skink and pig paper, because it was not field work, but it was looking at the overlapping ranges in the Spruce Woods area and stuff, so.
Yeah.
You know, really the focus was to look at the impacts that pigs are having on the pig species, other species, yeah.
And
Not
they
from
might
trail
be
cameras.
like that, the range, like as far as the population that's sustaining itself, the breeding population. It's basically like the Assiniboine Delta aquifer, which is the same thing as like the prairie skinks, right? So it's overlapping with a lot of the hognose snakes and stuff like that, so yeah, and I come across them when we're out, you know, like at trap sites and stuff, there's skinks and hognose snakes out there and stuff, so. I'm sure if a pig finds it, it is probably gonna eat them actually, so, yeah, it's an unfortunate thing about pigs again, so.
I see.
Yeah, I'm just curious. So in the last 3 years, what is the success rate like in terms of removing things, and how long do you think it will take to completely remove them?
Yeah, that's honestly, that's a tough question, but it really depends on the winters. I'll just say, if we get really harsh winters, we actually don't have to do a lot of work, we're finding. And as long as we get a few more pretty harsh, cold, regular deep snow winters, our climate will actually take out enough of those smaller populate, like the smaller pigs in general that made through the spring. That as long as we're removing the sows, it might not take too many years before we're able to keep that population eventually eradicate. So, you get some really easy warm winters here coming. It's gonna be harder. So, like when we have US people come up, trappers and stuff, and we show them like Spruce Woods Park, and we got pigs out there, they're like, oh my god, there must be a million pigs out here. And we're like, well, no, there isn't. Like, they're surviving, but they're not expanding tenfold. They're year after year is what it says. Like they're not. So yeah, but to answer how long it would take, yeah, I mean, we hope to remove them as quickly as we can. Like that's what we're doing. So, but it's really dependent on climate actually. So.
Kieran, get back to you after.
Yeah,
I know like the goal is obviously get rid of them as soon as possible, but have you found any like long-term data on whether or not these pigs are returning to specific sites on an annual basis? Because you say that their movement is seasonal, so are they returning to particular sites kind of on an annual basis?
Yeah, for sure they are, yeah, and we've tracked, like, just with our cell cameras. We can have enough cell cameras out in certain areas where we know. They're not there right now, but we fly the drones, 5 miles over, that's where they are, and. Like I said, once it gets cold, once the ground freezes and there's less food sources out in those areas, they all move, like. Like right now, if you travel the countryside in Manitoba, there's a lot of cornfields. And those pigs are bedding and living in those cornfields right now, there's lots of cover and there's food. Once those cornfields are off, there's nothing, like, there's currents there, but there's really nothing there, and they all travel back. Basically, Spruce Woods is where they all kind of go back, so. Yeah, we've seen that pattern of them moving out of that area, and then pretty soon they all kind of come back, so. Knowing that, that's where we target them, we know where they're gonna head to. And that's what we focus on trapping it, so like we hire more staff in the winter, stuff like that because of it, so. Yeah, that's a hard thing about them, is because they do move around a lot. It's getting ahead of them, but it can change year to year too, somebody changes how they grow their crops, and then you go standing cornfield out. It can change things too every year, so, or get a bunch of acorns, like this year is pretty good for acorns again. They're gonna be pretty fat pretty soon, and it's harder, so, yeah.
There's your flight parameters, so you're at 400 feet, 45 degrees, says the max of every door, just on that slide.
Sure.
Are you doing thermal from that height?
Yeah.
So then, like, that's a massive effort. So like, are you on the sides, I guess, of that reach? Are you able to see the thermal just as well as you are, say, the animals right below you?
Yeah, I would say so, I would say when it's like -30,
Yeah.
I could see a pig a mile away. Like maybe half a mile for sure, like you could pick out. You can pick out like a squirrel from quite a long distance away, you can pick out like. Something in a tree a long ways away, because it's been sitting in that tree long enough, it's giving off enough heat, like. It's pretty amazing how these thermal cameras work, like, especially when it's really cold out, like when it's -20. Everything is cold, the ground, everything looks black, and you just have this white dot in the distance. And fly over to that white dot, and you're just like, oh. It's a turkey sitting up in the tree here, actually, it's not even or a bird, like we've actually found. Blackbirds in certain locations this winter that was like, oh, they're not supposed to be here, but there's blackbirds in this field, and that, like, they pick up. Yeah, it's pretty unique, so. Squirrels are kind of annoying, or rabbits are kind of annoying, is they're kind of hidden underneath, and then all of a sudden they're moving around, and I found lately that, yeah, you pick up a lot of rabbits. Nests, like even nests or wasp nests, I found 3 wasp nests last week flying the drone, and it's like. Bright glowing spots in a tree, and you can't see it because they're kind of in the tree, and you come down low and I feel like, oh, it's a wasp net, but they're giving off a lot of heat, so, yeah. Yeah, very useful tool, that's for sure. Any more questions? Okay.
Are you at the hunt them?
Yeah, so in Manitoba, they're open season basically, there's no hunting regulations on wild pig.
Can you basically put a price tag on their head? Encourage. Yeah, but
To be honest, we don't like it, to be honest, it doesn't help, I'll just say, it's one of those things that you think. Like, with deer or any other species, it'd be easy, but it doesn't, it has a negative effect on our efforts. Because they're so difficult to actually remove that. The people that go out there and then try to remove the pigs by hunting, they end up putting up bait sites and stuff, and then. It pushes the pigs actually from that area during the daytime, but then they come back at night and they just gorge on those spots, and the guy goes, oh, there's a pig there again last night. And then he sits there all day, doesn't see anything, and then he goes, okay, dumps on a pail of corn or whatever, and. Yeah, they're constantly just feeding pigs, they're not actually removing, like, not saying that guy hasn't shot some pigs, but overall. It's very negative to our efforts, so, yeah.
And please fill in the details, correct me, but I remember from a talk that Brian gave, the group dynamics and the hunting. Let's take out the whole group,
Right.
then you actually are just end up making more pigs. Instead of removing pigs, but I might, yeah, the details, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, we have found that, I'm not gonna say hunting or even trapping is really like a 100% thing and never remove, like what we found actually, you don't really need to do that, but and a lot of times they maybe don't even actually scare out of those areas, it's more just all the. I don't know today, but very few pigs are actually shot by baiting sites, like if it worked, we would do it, we don't, none of us in the field staff do that. It's not effective at all, but if we would, if it worked, we have 100 cell cameras out there, if we had a pig that was coming around to a spot during the middle of the day that we could target that pig. We would, even if we had regulations and permits to do it at night, which like we don't do it at night, but if we apply for it, we got permits. At -30, those pigs maybe only come around every week or 2 weeks sometimes, and you'd be cold, you'd be sitting a lot of time sitting there without seeing anything, so. Hunting in general, the people that actually hunt pigs, for the most part, landowners see pigs when they're harvesting or something, put those out, or they're just out. Hunters, when they're getting out to like their blinds or something, and they just come across a pig that's quickly going through the bush or it's scared out of the spot. That's when they're actually hunted and shot. Very few are shot over like targeted spots, so I will say that we're using like thermal drones, we can locate these pigs during the day and are successful going in there, targeting it that way,
Sure.
but not actually like hunting them, I'll say, so.
Thank you.
I just have a question about your DNA. Is it a pretty new relationship that you have with East and One College, or has this been something that's been going on for a while?
I feel like it's 3 years actually, we've been doing this, like every year, there's more and more done. I feel like actually we're doing some work with Brown University as well this year, so. Yeah, okay.
I wasn't that yet, but I'll do it.
Yeah, great. Cause part of our thing is that we are still sending those samples away to Winnipeg to a lab and costs and everything, the timeline and everything. It would be nice to streamline that a lot better, so I think like that's what.
Yeah, so I have a follow-up for that, I guess.
Sure.
I only asked because I used to be with Dr. Austin, but so in terms of your traceability for your eDNA, are you finding that your response times to the locations where you're finding the stats, the logos, and even where they're uprooting these areas, are you finding that your response time is fast enough to pick up anything from those areas? Just because even say a summer climate, when it's really hot, you kind of break down from some of those samples, do you find that you're able to get to them fast enough to find traceable data?
You know what, I'm not gonna be able to answer that question
No?
very well.
Okay.
I'm not doing it, so that's doing the work behind this.
No worries.
I'm the guy that goes, hey, we got pigs here, I got a stream here, I got a camera here, pig 1.5. Do your sampling here, and I know from the stuff that they're doing that they have, and because of the areas that we're actually doing the sampling. We see one pig, crossing a stream that doesn't mean get 5 more the next day going upstream, another spot too, it's very difficult and then going from like. This is how it works to what works in real time, but from the data and the information they've been doing. On control systems, that DNA lasts a long time, actually, like quite long, and that's part of it.
Yeah.
Is that just tracing how long, like if it's a week or 2 weeks, and it'll change by temperature too, right? But that's a big part of the methods and stuff too, is then also like, oh, well, we just got a sample, it had to be within a week or something, so on my end of things, it's more just like, yes, there was a pig here, or no, yeah, and then field team going in there and doing more work. Rather than us going into areas across, Manitoba, just guessing there's pigs there when we know there's some pigs in other areas, so it's useful, but yeah, there's always limits to it, I think. But yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. Huge thank you to Devon Baete,